The text message arrived at 11:47 p.m., just as I was settling into my leather recliner with a glass of bourbon and the financial reports I'd been avoiding all day. The phone's blue glow cut through the darkness of my home office like a knife. "How are you? Not feeling lonely?" Vera's words stared back at me from the screen, each letter dripping with false concern. I could practically hear her voice, that practiced, honeyed tone she used when she wanted something or was covering her tracks. "Not as lonely as your hotel bed, I bet," I thought, taking a slow sip of bourbon. The irony wasn't lost on me. Here was my wife of 15 years, supposedly attending a luxury real estate conference in Chicago, asking if I felt lonely while she was probably wrapped around Finn Harlow like a designer scarf. "My name is Grant Solen, and I'm a financial consultant who specializes in making other people's problems disappear through careful planning and strategic thinking. At 41, I've built a reputation for being thorough, methodical, and absolutely relentless when someone tries to cheat the system. Too bad I hadn't applied those same skills to my marriage until now." The house felt different without Vera's constant chatter and the click of her heels on our hardwood floors. Quieter, yes, but also cleaner somehow. Like the air itself had been purged of something toxic. Our suburban Milwaukee home, with its pristine landscaping and 3-car garage, had become a stage set for a marriage that existed only on paper. I set my phone down and walked to the kitchen, my footsteps echoing in the empty space. The granite countertops gleamed under the pendant lights, reflecting nothing but my own tired face. Vera had insisted on this kitchen renovation 2 years ago. Top of the line everything, she'd said. "We need to maintain appearances, Grant. Image matters in my business." Image. That word had become Vera's religion, and Finn Harlow was her newest convert. Finn owned a tech company downtown, one of those modern glass towers that sprouted up along the Milwaukee River like expensive weeds. He was everything Vera thought she wanted: younger than me by 3 years, taller by 4 inches, and richer by several $1,000,000. Most importantly, he was single, or at least he had been until his wife caught wind of his extracurricular activities. The signs had been there for months. Late nights at the office became weekend conferences. Client dinners stretched into breakfast meetings. Vera's phone, once carelessly left on counters and tables, now lived permanently attached to her hand or buried deep in her purse. But it was the butt dial 3 weeks ago that really opened my eyes. I'd been in my office, working on a particularly complex portfolio restructuring, when my phone buzzed with an incoming call from Vera. I answered, expecting her usual request to pick up dry cleaning or remember some social obligation I'd forgotten. Instead, I heard voices, Vera's and her best friend Rita Kells, talking in that conspiratorial whisper women use when they think no one's listening. "I'm telling you, Rita, Finn is incredible. I haven't felt this alive in years." "What about Grant? Doesn't he suspect anything?" Vera's laugh was sharp, dismissive. "Grant? Please. He's so buried in his spreadsheets and client reports, he wouldn't notice if I moved out completely. Besides, he's gotten so boring. Same routine every night. Dinner, bourbon, those awful financial shows. When's the last time he surprised me with anything? Still, 15 years of marriage. 15 years of settling," Vera interrupted. "Finn makes me feel like a woman again, not just some suburban housewife counting down the days until retirement." The conversation continued for another 10 minutes, each word carving deeper into whatever remained of my respect for the woman I'd married. They discussed logistics, which hotels offered the most discretion, how to coordinate schedules, even crude comparisons between Finn's performance and my own supposed inadequacies. I'd sat there in my office chair, bourbon growing warm in my hand, listening to my wife dissect our marriage with the clinical precision of a coroner. The strange thing was, I didn't feel hurt. I felt liberated, like I'd finally been given permission to stop pretending. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. That night, I'd called my younger brother Julian, an ex-cop who now ran a private security firm. Julian had always been the practical one in our family, the guy who saw through people's nonsense and called it what it was. "You sure about this, Grant?" he'd asked after I explained the situation. "Completely. I need to know everything, where they go, when they meet, what they're planning." "And then what?" I'd stared out my office window at the perfectly manicured lawn Vera insisted we maintain. "Then I'm going to give her exactly what she wants. A new life. Just not the one she's expecting." Julian's investigation had been thorough and depressingly predictable. Vera and Finn had been meeting regularly for 4 months, always at upscale hotels, always during her supposed work trips. They had plans. Big ones. Finn was going to leave his wife, Vera was going to leave me, and they'd start fresh in his lakeside mansion. The evidence was overwhelming. Hotel receipts, restaurant charges, even social media posts from locations where they'd supposedly been separately but were photographed together in the background of other people's pictures. Modern technology made cheating easier, but it also made hiding it nearly impossible if you knew where to look. Now, staring at Vera's text message, I felt that familiar surge of cold calculation that had made me successful in my profession. She wanted to play games? Fine. But she was about to learn that I'd been playing them longer and better than she ever imagined. I picked up my phone and typed a response. "Miss you too. See you soon." Then I opened my contacts and scrolled to Marlow Trasker, my old college friend who'd become one of the city's most effective attorneys. Marlow specialized in what he called creative problem-solving, finding legal ways to make people's lives very, very complicated. The phone rang twice before his familiar gravelly voice answered. "Grant, it's almost midnight. This better be good." "It's time, Marlow. Operation Collapse starts tomorrow." There was a pause, then a chuckle. "About time. I was wondering when you'd finally pull the trigger on this thing. You've got everything documented?" "Everything. Julian's been thorough." "Good. I'll have the papers ready by morning. You sure you want to go nuclear on this?" I looked around my empty house, thinking about Vera's dismissive laugh, her casual cruelty, her complete disregard for everything we'd supposedly built together. "Absolutely. She wanted a new life. I'm just going to make sure she gets it exactly the way she deserves." After hanging up with Marlow, I walked back to my office and opened my laptop. The screen illuminated dozens of files Julian had compiled: photos, receipts, phone records, social media screenshots. Everything needed to dismantle a life built on lies and pretense. Vera thought she was so clever, so careful. But she'd made one crucial mistake. She'd underestimated the man she'd been lying to for months. I wasn't just some boring suburban husband counting down the days until retirement. I was a financial consultant who specialized in finding hidden assets and exposing fraud. I'd built my career on being more thorough, more patient, and more ruthless than the people trying to cheat the system. Now it was time to apply those skills to my personal life. I opened a new email and began typing. The first message would go to Express Movers, a company I'd used for client relocations. They offered same-day service for the right price, and they were very, very discreet about unusual requests. The second email went to my accountant, authorizing the immediate freeze of all joint accounts pending a complete audit of expenditures. Vera's shopping sprees and mysterious cash withdrawals were about to become very public knowledge. The third went to Julian with a simple message: "Tomorrow morning, bring the cameras." By the time I finished my bourbon and closed the laptop, it was past 1 a.m. Vera's text message still glowed on my phone screen, a reminder of just how little she understood about the man she'd decided to betray. I walked upstairs to our bedroom, my bedroom now, really, and looked around at the space we'd once shared. Vera's side of the closet was half empty, her dresser cleared of everything except the jewelry she'd deemed too modest for her new lifestyle. Even our bedroom had become a casualty of her deception. But tomorrow, everything would change. Tomorrow, Vera would learn that actions have consequences, and that the boring suburban husband she'd dismissed so casually had been planning his own surprise. I set my phone on the nightstand and smiled for the first time in months. Operation Collapse was about to begin, and Vera Halden was going to discover that some surprises aren't the kind you want to receive. The movers arrived at 8 a.m. sharp, just as I'd requested. 3 guys in matching uniforms, led by a supervisor named Dave, who looked like he'd seen every kind of weird request in his 20-year career. "You're sure about the address, Mr. Solen?" Dave asked, consulting his clipboard. "Penthouse suite, downtown?" "Absolutely certain. Everything in those boxes goes to Mr. Finn Harlow's residence. Make sure you get a signature confirmation and take photos of the delivery." Dave nodded and gestured to his crew. They began loading Vera's carefully packed belongings, her designer handbags, her collection of expensive shoes, her jewelry box, even the silk scarves she'd spent a fortune collecting during our European vacation 3 years ago. I'd spent the early morning hours methodically packing every item that belonged exclusively to Vera. Not out of spite, but out of practicality. She wanted a new life with Finn? She should have her things with her. Each box was labeled with a shipping manifest, and I'd included a handwritten note. "Dear Finn, Vera mentioned she'd be staying with you more often. Thought she might need these. Best regards, Grant." My phone buzzed with a text from Julian. "In position outside Finn's building. This should be interesting." The beauty of the plan was its simplicity. Nothing illegal. Nothing that could be traced back to malicious intent. Just a thoughtful husband making sure his wife's belongings were where she apparently wanted them to be. After the movers left, I settled into my office with a fresh cup of coffee and opened my laptop. Vera's social media accounts were already lighting up with activity, photos from her conference, carefully staged shots of hotel lobbies and conference rooms that looked suspiciously similar to the backgrounds in Finn's recent posts. I opened the folder Julian had prepared and selected a series of photographs. Vera and Finn entering the Pfister Hotel. Vera and Finn at a downtown restaurant. Vera and Finn walking along the lakefront, her hand on his arm in a gesture that was anything but professional. The photos were taken from public spaces, completely legal and absolutely damning when viewed together. I created a simple slideshow, adding timestamps and location data, then composed an email to Vera's inner circle, her work colleagues, her book club, her yoga instructor, and of course, Rita. The subject line read, "Thought you might find these interesting." The message was brief. "Found these photos while organizing some files. Vera's been working so hard lately. It's nice to see her finding time to network with clients like Mr. Harlow. Hope everyone's having a great week." I hit send and leaned back in my chair. Within minutes, my phone started buzzing with responses. Shock, confusion, a few carefully worded messages asking if I was okay and if there was anything they could do. But the most interesting response came from Rita. "Grant, we need to talk. Can you call me?" I dialed her number and she answered on the first ring. "Grant, I don't know what to say." "About what, Rita? The photos? I thought they were nice. Vera looks happy." There was a long pause. "You know, don't you?" "Know what?" "About Vera and Finn. About what's been going on." I let the silence stretch, forcing her to fill it. "Grant, I'm sorry. I told her this was a mistake, that she was going to ruin everything, but she wouldn't listen. She said you'd never find out, that you didn't pay attention anyway." "Interesting perspective," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "Tell me, Rita, how long have you known?" "Months, since it started. But Grant, you have to understand, she's my friend. I couldn't just—" "Of course not. Loyalty is important. Speaking of which, there's something you should probably know about Finn." I could hear her breathing change. "What do you mean?" "Well, Since we're being honest now, I thought you might be interested to know that Vera isn't Finn's only extracurricular activity. Julian's been very thorough in his research. I opened another file on my laptop, one that detailed Finn's other relationships over the past year. 3 different women, all carefully compartmentalized, all apparently unaware of each other. There's a marketing executive named Jennifer who's been meeting him on Tuesdays, a lawyer named Patricia who gets Thursdays, and now Vera has claimed Fridays. Finn's very organized, I'll give him that. Rita's sharp intake of breath told me everything I needed to know. Are you serious? Completely. I have photos, receipts, the works. Your friend Vera is just the latest in a series of conquests, though I'm sure she believes she's special. Oh my God, she has no idea, does she? None whatsoever. She thinks she's found her soulmate. Meanwhile, Finn's treating her like a scheduled appointment. There was another long pause, and I could practically hear Rita's loyalty shifting in real time. Grant, what are you going to do? Me? Nothing. I'm just going to let the truth speak for itself, though I imagine some people might find this information enlightening. After hanging up with Rita, I checked my email. Vera had responded to my photo slideshow with a message that was equal parts panic and rage. What the hell do you think you're doing? Those photos are taken out of context. Call me immediately. Instead of calling, I replied with a simple message. Just sharing some nice pictures. Hope the conference is going well. By the way, you might want to check with Finn about a delivery. My phone rang within seconds. Vera's voice was sharp, strained. Grant, what delivery? What are you talking about? Oh, just some of your things. I noticed you'd been taking more overnight trips lately, so I thought you might need them. Very thoughtful of me, don't you think? You sent my things where? To Finn's place. Isn't that where you've been staying during your conferences? The silence on the other end was deafening. When Vera finally spoke, her voice was different, colder, more calculating. You think you're clever, don't you? Fine. If you want to play games, we can play games, but you're not going to like how this ends. Probably not, I agreed, but I imagine I'll like it more than you will. She hung up, but my phone immediately rang again. This time it was Julian. Grant, you need to see this. I'm sending you a video right now. The file arrived as I was speaking with him. It showed the movers arriving at Finn's building, wheeling boxes and garment bags through the lobby, while the doorman looked increasingly confused. Then Finn himself appeared, still in his pajamas and robe, clearly having been awakened by the delivery. The video captured his face perfectly, as Dave, the moving supervisor, cheerfully explained that Mr. Grant Solen had arranged for Mrs. Vera Solen's belongings to be delivered to his penthouse suite. Finn's expression shifted from confusion to horror to panic in the space of about 10 seconds. He tried to refuse the delivery, but Dave, following his instructions perfectly, explained that the items had been paid for and required a signature confirmation. The best part came when Finn's wife appeared in the lobby, clearly having followed him down to investigate the commotion. She took one look at the boxes labeled with women's clothing and jewelry, read my note, and her face went completely white. This is beautiful, Julian said over the phone. The whole lobby got a show. Building security cameras caught everything, and I guarantee this story's going to spread through that place like wildfire. What about Vera? Any word from the hotel? Oh, that's the best part. She checked out an hour ago and is driving back. Rita called her right after she talked to you and told her about Finn's other girlfriends. Vera's apparently having what hotel staff described as a complete meltdown. I smiled, feeling a deep satisfaction settle in my chest. The first phase of Operation Collapse was exceeding all expectations. Julian, I need you to do something else for me. Can you set up surveillance on the house? I have a feeling Vera's going to want to have a conversation when she gets back. Already on it. I've got cameras positioned to cover all the entrances, and I'll be parked across the street. You sure you're ready for whatever she's planning? I looked around my office, at the files documenting months of lies and betrayal, at the emails already spreading through Vera's social circle like a virus, at the evidence of Finn's other affairs that would soon destroy whatever fantasy Vera had built around their relationship. More ready than I've ever been. She wanted to play in the big leagues, Julian. Time to show her what that actually looks like. After hanging up, I opened my laptop and began preparing the next phase. Vera thought her little tantrum on the phone was the opening move in some kind of negotiation. She had no idea that I'd been planning this campaign for weeks, that every move she might make had already been anticipated and countered. My phone buzzed with a text from Marlow. Legal documents are ready. Financial accounts are frozen pending audit. Her corporate credit cards have been suspended for irregular usage patterns. Want me to proceed with the next phase? I typed back, proceed. She'll be home soon, and I want her to understand exactly how much her new life is going to cost her. Outside, storm clouds were gathering over Milwaukee, and I could hear the distant rumble of thunder. It seemed appropriate. Vera's perfect little world was about to experience some very turbulent weather, and unlike her fake conferences and staged social media posts, this storm was going to be completely real. The call came at 9:15 a.m., just as I was finishing my second cup of coffee and reviewing the overnight damage reports from Julian. Vera's boss, Margaret Steinberg, sounded tired and more than a little irritated. Grant, we need to talk. Can you come to the office this morning? Margaret ran Prestige Properties, the luxury real estate firm where Vera had worked for the past 8 years. She was a sharp woman in her 60s who'd built her company on discretion, professionalism, and an absolute intolerance for scandal. Of course, Margaret. Is everything all right? That's what I'm hoping you can help me understand. There are some irregularities that have come to light regarding Vera's recent activities. I arrived at Prestige Properties 30 minutes later, dressed in my best suit and carrying a leather portfolio that contained everything Margaret would need to understand exactly what kind of employee she'd been harboring. The office was located in a converted mansion in the historic Third Ward, all polished hardwood and expensive artwork, designed to impress clients with 7-figure budgets. Margaret's office overlooked the Milwaukee River, and on any other day, the view would have been calming. Grant, thank you for coming. Margaret gestured to a chair across from her massive oak desk. I'll get straight to the point. We've received some concerning information about Vera's relationship with one of our clients. Finn Harlow? Her eyebrows rose slightly. You know about Mr. Harlow? I know quite a bit about Mr. Harlow. I opened my portfolio and withdrew a folder. In fact, I think this information might help clarify the situation for you. Margaret opened the folder and began reading. Her expression grew increasingly grim as she reviewed the timeline Julian had prepared. Dates, locations, hotel receipts, restaurant charges, all cross-referenced with Vera's work schedule and client meetings. These are very serious allegations, Grant. They're not allegations, Margaret. They're documented facts. Vera has been using company resources, company time, and company-client relationships to conduct a personal affair. She's violated your conflict of interest policies, your professional conduct standards, and probably several state real estate licensing requirements. Margaret set the folder down and rubbed her temples. What do you want me to do with this information? Nothing. I'm simply providing it as a courtesy, since your company's reputation might be affected by association. What you do with it is entirely your decision. She studied me for a long moment. You're divorcing her. That seems likely, yes. And you want her fired? I shook my head. I don't want anything, Margaret. I'm just making sure all the relevant parties have access to accurate information. Vera made her choices. Now she gets to live with the consequences. Margaret's phone buzzed, and she glanced at the screen. She's here. Vera just pulled into the parking lot. Perfect timing. I'll let you handle this however you think is appropriate. I gathered my portfolio and stood to leave, but Margaret held up a hand. Grant, stay. I think it would be beneficial for all parties if we address this situation together. 5 minutes later, Vera burst through Margaret's office door like a hurricane in designer clothing. Her hair was disheveled, her makeup smeared, and her usually perfect composure had been replaced by barely controlled rage. "Margaret, we need to talk about my husband's completely inappropriate behavior. He's been stalking me, harassing my friends, and now he's trying to sabotage my career with lies and—" She stopped mid-sentence when she saw me sitting calmly in the chair beside Margaret's desk. "What is he doing here?" "Grant came to discuss some concerns about your professional conduct," Margaret said, her voice carefully neutral. "Perhaps you'd like to sit down so we can address this situation properly." Vera remained standing, her eyes darting between Margaret and me like a cornered animal. "Whatever he's told you, it's lies. He's having some kind of breakdown, and he's trying to destroy my life because he can't handle the fact that I'm successful and independent." Margaret opened the folder I'd provided and turned it so Vera could see the contents. "Are these photographs fabricated, Vera?" Vera's face went pale as she recognized the images, herself and Finn at various locations, timestamps clearly visible, her body language unmistakably intimate. "Those are taken out of context. Finn is a client, and we've been working on several high-value properties. Everything we've done has been completely professional." "Including the overnight stays at the Pfister Hotel?" I asked, consulting my notes. "The romantic dinners at Sanford? The weekend trip to his lakeside property that you billed as a property inspection?" Vera's composure cracked completely. "You bastard! You've been spying on me." "I've been documenting your activities, yes. It's amazing what becomes public record when someone stops being careful about covering their tracks." Margaret cleared her throat. "Vera, regardless of the personal issues between you and Grant, these documents raise serious questions about your professional conduct. Using company resources to pursue personal relationships with clients is a clear violation of our policies." "You can't be serious. I've been one of your top producers for 8 years. I've brought in millions of dollars in commissions. And now you've potentially exposed the company to liability issues, professional conduct violations, and regulatory scrutiny," Margaret replied. "I'm sorry, Vera, but I have to suspend you pending a full investigation." Vera's face twisted with fury. "This is illegal. You can't fire me based on my husband's lies and jealousy." "I'm not firing you," Margaret said calmly. "I'm suspending you while we investigate potential policy violations. Your access to company systems will be terminated immediately, and you'll need to surrender your company credit card and phone." "I'll sue you. I'll sue both of you. This is harassment, discrimination, and—" "Actually," I interrupted, "it's consequences. You used company resources to conduct personal business. You violated professional ethics standards. You lied to your employer about your activities. These aren't my opinions, Vera. They're documented facts." Margaret's assistant appeared in the doorway, clearly having been summoned by some hidden signal. "Ms. Steinberg, security is here." "Thank you, Patricia. Vera, I'm going to need you to collect your personal items and leave the premises. We'll be in touch regarding the investigation." Vera looked back and forth between Margaret and me, her face cycling through rage, disbelief, and finally, desperate calculation. "Grant, we can work this out. We don't have to destroy everything we've built. We can go to counseling. We can't do anything, Vera. You made your choice months ago. I'm just making sure everyone understands what that choice actually cost." She tried one more approach, her voice dropping to the manipulative tone she'd perfected over the years. "Please, don't do this. I made mistakes, but we can fix this. We can fix us." I stood up and straightened my tie. "There is no us, Vera. There hasn't been for months. You just forgot to mention it to me." As I walked toward the door, Vera's voice rose to a shriek. "This isn't over, Grant. You think you're so smart, but you have no idea what I'm capable of." I paused at the doorway and turned back to face her. "Actually, I have a very good idea what you're capable of. That's why I documented everything." Outside Prestige Properties, I called Julian from my car. "How did it go?" he asked. "Better than expected. Vera's been suspended, and Margaret's launching a full investigation. What's the situation at Finn's office?" "Oh, that's even better. His wife showed up an hour ago with divorce papers and a photographer. She's documenting everything in his office for the asset division. Finn tried to claim the boxes were delivered by mistake, but his wife found Vera's jewelry in his desk drawer. Her jewelry? Apparently, she'd been leaving things at his place. His wife is treating it like evidence of asset concealment. Finn's having his own very public meltdown right now. I smiled, feeling that familiar satisfaction. What about social media? Rita's been busy. She's posted everything you told her about Finn's other girlfriends, complete with photos and timelines. Vera's book club is having a field day, and her yoga instructor posted something about toxic energy and cleansing negative influences from our community. Perfect. What's our next move? Well, Vera's heading home. She called Finn from the parking lot, screaming at him about the delivery and demanding he fix everything. He hung up on her. I started my car and pulled out of the parking lot, feeling lighter than I had in months. Then I think it's time for the home front confrontation. Are you ready? Born ready, brother. This is going to be fun. As I drove through downtown Milwaukee, I reflected on how quickly Vera's carefully constructed world was collapsing. She'd built her new life on lies, manipulation, and the assumption that I was too boring and distracted to notice what she was doing. But she'd forgotten something important about boring suburban husbands. We're usually boring because we're methodical, patient, and very, very thorough when we decide to pay attention to something. Vera was about to learn that lesson in the most public, humiliating way possible. The storm hit Milwaukee just as Vera's BMW turned into our driveway. I watched from my office window as she sat in her car for several minutes, probably trying to compose herself or figure out her next move. Lightning illuminated her face through the windshield, and even from a distance, I could see the fury radiating from her like heat waves. Julian's voice crackled through the radio he'd given me. She's got company, Grant. Rita's car just pulled up, and there's a third vehicle. Looks like a security company van. I wasn't surprised. Vera had always been dramatic, and bringing reinforcements fit her style perfectly. What she didn't know was that I'd been expecting this exact scenario. My phone buzzed with a text from Marlow. All legal documents are in place. Recording equipment is active. Remember, let her make the first move. The front door slammed with enough force to rattle the windows. Vera's voice echoed through the house, sharp and commanding. Grant, get down here right now. We're going to settle this like adults. I took my time walking downstairs, straightening my shirt and checking my appearance in the hallway mirror. When I reached the living room, I found Vera flanked by Rita and a large man in a security uniform who looked distinctly uncomfortable with whatever he'd been hired to do. Hello, Vera. Rita, gentlemen. I nodded politely to each of them. Quite a storm out there. Can I offer anyone coffee? Vera's face was flushed with rage, her designer outfit wrinkled from her hasty drive home. Cut the act, Grant. We both know why I'm here. Actually, I'm not sure I do. This is your home too, at least for now. You don't need an escort to visit. Don't play dumb. You've destroyed my career, humiliated me in front of my friends, and somehow convinced everyone that I'm the villain here. Well, I'm done being your victim. I settled into my favorite armchair, the one with a clear view of the room and the security cameras Julian had positioned earlier. Victim? That's an interesting choice of words. Rita stepped forward, clearly uncomfortable but trying to play her assigned role. Grant, maybe we can all just calm down and talk about this reasonably. Nobody wants this situation to get out of hand. I agree completely, I said, though I'm curious what situation you're referring to. Vera's affair? Her violation of professional ethics? Her lies to friends and family? Which particular situation needs discussing? The security guard shifted nervously. Ma'am, maybe we should— No! Vera snapped. I'm not leaving until this gets resolved. She turned back to me, her voice dropping to the cold, calculating tone I'd grown to recognize over the past few months. Here's what's going to happen, Grant. You're going to call Margaret and tell her you made everything up. You're going to contact everyone who received those photos and explain that they were fabricated. And you're going to transfer half of our assets to my personal account by tomorrow morning. I raised an eyebrow. Or what? or I'll make sure everyone knows about your little problem." The room went quiet except for the thunder outside. Rita looked confused. The security guard looked like he wanted to be anywhere else, and Vera looked triumphant. "What problem would that be?" I asked calmly. "Don't pretend you don't know. The incident at the Johnson account last year, the missing funds, the client who almost filed charges before you managed to cover everything up." I nodded slowly, impressed despite myself. "You mean the embezzlement case where I discovered that Patricia Johnson's business partner was stealing from their accounts, and I spent 6 months of unpaid overtime reconstructing their books to prove her innocence?" Vera's confident expression flickered. "That's not... You told me there were problems with the account." There were problems. Patricia's partner was embezzling funds and trying to frame her for it. I exposed the fraud and saved Patricia's business. She sent me a very nice thank you note, actually. Would you like to see it? The color drained from Vera's face as she realized her ammunition was useless. The beautiful thing about being thorough, Vera, is that the truth tends to be well documented, unlike some people's activities over the past few months. Rita cleared her throat. "Vera, maybe we should just..." "Shut up, Rita." Vera's composure was cracking completely now. "You don't understand. He's been planning this. He's been watching me, documenting everything, setting traps. This isn't about my relationship with Finn. This is about control." "Actually," I said, standing up slowly, "this is about consequences. You spent months lying to me, stealing from our joint accounts to fund your affair, and plotting to leave me for another man. I simply documented your choices and made sure the appropriate people were informed. You ruined my career. You ruined your career when you decided to use company resources to conduct personal business with clients. You destroyed my friendships. I shared factual information with people who deserved to know they were being lied to. You humiliated me. No, Vera, you humiliated yourself. I just made sure people could see it clearly." Lightning flashed outside, illuminating the room in stark white light. In that moment, Vera looked like a stranger, wild-eyed, desperate, and completely unmoored from the composed woman I'd married 15 years ago. "Fine," she said, her voice dropping to a whisper. "If you want to play hardball, we'll play hardball, but you're not going to like what happens next." She turned to the security guard. "I want you to document everything in this house. Every piece of furniture, every electronic device, every item of value. I'm entitled to half of everything, and I'm going to make sure I get it." The guard looked even more uncomfortable. "Ma'am, I'm not sure I can..." "You're being paid to follow my instructions." "Actually," I interrupted, "he's being paid to provide security services, not to conduct property assessments. And since this is still legally my primary residence, I have the right to refuse entry to anyone I choose." I walked to the front door and opened it. Rain was pouring down in sheets, and the wind was strong enough to bend the trees in our front yard. "I think it's time for everyone to leave." Vera's face twisted with rage. "You can't throw me out of my own house." "I'm not throwing you out, Vera. I'm asking your employees to leave. You're welcome to stay and discuss this privately, like the adults you mentioned earlier." Rita grabbed Vera's arm. "Come on, Vera, let's go. We can figure this out tomorrow." "No!" Vera shook off Rita's hand and stepped closer to me. "I'm not leaving until this gets settled. You think you've won, but you have no idea what you've started." I looked at her for a long moment, this woman I'd once loved, now transformed by her own choices into someone I barely recognized. "I know exactly what I've started, Vera. I've started telling the truth. And the truth is that you stopped being my wife months ago. You just forgot to file the paperwork." Thunder crashed overhead, and in the sudden silence that followed, I could hear Vera's rapid breathing, Rita's nervous shuffling, and the security guard's radio crackling with static. "Get out," Vera said quietly. "All of you, get out. I need to talk to my husband alone." Rita hesitated. "Vera, are you sure that's..." "Get out." After Rita and the security guard left, Vera and I stood facing each other in our living room, 15 years of marriage reduced to this moment of absolute honesty. "So what now?" she asked. "Now you decide what kind of person you want to be," I replied. "The victim who blames everyone else for her choices, or the adult who takes responsibility for what she's done?" Vera stared at me for a long moment, and I could see her cycling through different strategies, different approaches, different versions of herself she might try to deploy. Finally, she smiled, a cold, calculating expression that told me everything I needed to know about her decision. "You're going to regret this, Grant. Before this is over, you're going to wish you'd just looked the other way and let me live my life." "Maybe," I said. But I doubt it. She walked to the door, paused, and looked back at me one final time. "This isn't over." "Yes, it is," I replied. "You just don't realize it yet." After she left, I called Julian. "How much of that did you get?" "Every word, every gesture, every threat. The cameras worked perfectly." "Good. Tomorrow we move to the final phase." "You sure you're ready for this, Grant? Once we pull this trigger, there's no going back." I looked around the living room where Vera and I had once entertained friends, celebrated holidays, and planned a future that would never exist. I've never been more ready for anything in my life. The morning of the final confrontation dawned clear and cold, the storm having washed Milwaukee clean overnight. I stood in my kitchen at 6 a.m., drinking coffee and watching the sunrise paint the sky in shades of orange and pink that seemed almost too beautiful for what was about to happen. My phone buzzed with updates from the team I'd assembled. Julian was positioned across from Vera's apartment building with recording equipment. Marlow was at his office, ready to file the legal documents that would make everything official. Rita, now fully converted to my side after learning about Finn's other affairs, was standing by with her own camera and a direct connection to the local gossip blog that had been following the story. Most importantly, Dave and his moving crew were loaded and ready to execute the final phase of Operation Collapse. At exactly 9 a.m., I called Vera's phone. She answered on the second ring, her voice thick with sleep and what sounded like a hangover. "What do you want, Grant?" "Good morning to you too, Vera. I hope you slept well. I wanted to give you a courtesy call about another delivery." "Another delivery? What are you talking about?" "Well, since you seemed so upset about your things being at Finn's place, I thought I'd help you relocate them somewhere more appropriate." There was a long pause. "Grant, what did you do?" "Nothing dramatic. I just arranged for all of your belongings to be delivered to your new address. You did say you wanted a new life, right?" "My new address? I don't have a new address." "Of course you do. The apartment you've been renting downtown for the past month. The one you thought I didn't know about." The silence on the other end told me everything. Vera had indeed been planning her exit strategy, complete with a secret apartment funded by money she'd been siphoning from our joint accounts. She just hadn't expected me to discover it. "How did you—" "Credit card statements are public record in divorce proceedings, Vera. Your secret apartment, your furniture purchases, your deposits. It's all documented. I thought you might want your things delivered there since that's apparently where you've been planning to live." "You can't do this. Those are my belongings." "Exactly. Your belongings, your apartment, your new life. I'm just helping you make it official." I hung up and immediately called Julian. "She's on her way. Are you ready?" "Born ready. The movers just pulled up, and there's already a small crowd gathering. Word travels fast in this neighborhood." Vera's apartment building was a converted warehouse in the trendy Third Ward, the kind of place where young professionals paid premium rent for exposed brick walls and the illusion of urban sophistication. It was also directly across from a popular coffee shop, ensuring maximum visibility for whatever was about to happen. I arrived just as the moving trucks were unloading. Dave and his crew had outdone themselves. Every single item that belonged to Vera was neatly packed and labeled, from her extensive shoe collection to her collection of self-help books about finding your authentic self. But the real masterpiece was the presentation. Each box was tagged with a large laminated card that included a photo of the contents, an itemized list, and a brief explanation of its significance. Her jewelry box was labeled items purchased during a fair period. See receipts attached. Her designer dresses were tagged outfits worn to secret meetings with F. Harlow. See photo documentation. The crowd of onlookers was growing by the minute. Coffee shop patrons had emerged onto the sidewalk, phones in hand, recording everything. Residents of the building were leaning out of windows, and I could see Rita positioned strategically with her camera, broadcasting live to her social media followers. Vera's BMW screeched around the corner and slammed to a stop in front of the building. She emerged like a fury, her hair wild, still wearing the wrinkled clothes from yesterday. "Stop!" she screamed at the movers. "Stop right now! You can't do this!" Dave, following his instructions perfectly, approached her with his clipboard. "Ma'am, I need you to sign for the delivery. Everything's been carefully inventoried and transported according to the customer's specifications." "I'm not signing anything. This is harassment. This is illegal." "Actually," I said, stepping out of my car, "it's completely legal. These are your belongings, being delivered to your address, paid for with your money. I'm just making sure you get everything you're entitled to." Vera spun around to face me, her eyes wild with rage and desperation. "You bastard! You planned this whole thing." "I planned to give you exactly what you wanted, Vera. Independence, a fresh start, freedom from our boring suburban marriage." The crowd was growing larger, and I could see people live streaming the confrontation on multiple platforms. This wasn't just a private domestic dispute anymore. It was a public spectacle, which was exactly what I'd intended. "Look around, Vera," I continued, gesturing to the boxes and bags scattered across the sidewalk. "This is your new life. Every purchase you made while planning to leave me, every secret you kept, every lie you told. It's all here, documented and delivered exactly where you wanted it." Vera looked around at the crowd, at the cameras, at the evidence of her deception spread out for everyone to see. For a moment, I thought she might break down completely. Instead, she did something I hadn't expected. She laughed. "You think this humiliates me?" she said, her voice carrying across the street. "You think this makes you the winner? All you've done is prove that you're a petty, vindictive man who can't handle being left by a woman who outgrew him." She turned to address the crowd directly, playing to the cameras with the skill of someone who'd spent years crafting her public image. "Everyone here is watching a man destroy his wife because she had the courage to leave an unhappy marriage. This isn't justice, it's revenge. And it says everything about who Grant Solen really is." For a moment, I felt a flicker of doubt. Vera was good at this, at spinning narratives, at playing the victim, at making other people's actions seem unreasonable. Then Rita stepped forward, her phone still recording. "Tell them about Finn," she called out. "Tell them about the other women. Tell them about the money you stole from your joint accounts to pay for this apartment." Vera's confident expression faltered. "Rita, don't. Tell them about how you laughed at Grant behind his back, how you called him boring and pathetic, how you planned to take half his assets and leave him with nothing." The crowd's mood shifted. Murmurs of disapproval rippled through the onlookers as Rita continued her assault. "This isn't about a woman leaving an unhappy marriage. This is about a woman who lied, cheated, and stole from the man who loved her for 15 years. Vera's composure cracked completely. "Shut up, Rita. You don't know what you're talking about." "I know exactly what I'm talking about. I was there for all of it. I helped you plan it, and now I'm watching you get exactly what you deserve." The final blow came when Finn himself appeared, pushing through the crowd with his own security detail. His face was grim, his expensive suit rumpled, and he looked like a man who'd been awake all night dealing with his own crisis. "Vera," he said, his voice carrying clearly in the sudden quiet, "we need to talk." Finn, thank God. Tell them this is all lies. Tell them we're together, that we love each other. Finn looked around at the crowd, at the cameras, at the boxes of evidence scattered across the sidewalk. When he spoke, his voice was cold and distant. Vera, I can't do this anymore. My wife is divorcing me. My company is in crisis, and I can't afford to be associated with this situation any longer. What are you saying? I'm saying it's over. Whatever we had, it's finished. I'm sorry, but I have to protect myself and my business. The look on Vera's face was devastating, a mixture of shock, betrayal, and absolute despair as she realized that everyone she'd counted on had abandoned her. She turned back to me, her voice breaking. You did this. You destroyed everything. No, Vera, I said quietly. You destroyed everything. I just made sure everyone could see it clearly. The crowd began to disperse as the movers finished their work. Boxes and bags were stacked neatly in front of the apartment building, a monument to 15 years of marriage reduced to an inventory of possessions and betrayals. Vera stood among the wreckage of her carefully planned new life, alone and exposed, while the man she'd betrayed walked away into the cold Milwaukee morning. As I drove home through the city I'd called home for 2 decades, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Peace. Not happiness exactly, but the deep satisfaction that comes from seeing justice served and truth revealed. Vera had wanted a new life built on lies and deception. Instead, she'd gotten exactly what she deserved. The truth, delivered publicly and permanently, with no possibility of return or redemption. Operation Collapse was complete, and Vera Halden's undoing was now a matter of public record. The story would spread through social media, through gossip networks, through the interconnected web of relationships that make up any community. Vera's name would become synonymous with betrayal and deception, a cautionary tale about the cost of choosing lies over truth. And I would go home to my quiet house, pour myself a bourbon, and begin the process of building a life based on honesty, integrity, and the hard-won knowledge that some people get exactly what they deserve. The end came not with violence or dramatic confrontation, but with the simple, devastating power of truth delivered at exactly the right moment to exactly the right audience. Vera Halden had wanted to reinvent herself. Instead, she'd been revealed for exactly who she'd always been, and now everyone knew it. That was revenge enough.